Imagine someone just walked up to you on the street and offered you a deal, like a really serious deal. They say, I am going to take 11 entire years of your life, just erase them.
Wow.
Right? And
Wow.
in exchange, I'm going to give you a mild, permanent sense of ambient anxiety.
Mm.
Oh, and a chronically disrupted sleep schedule. And, just a lingering feeling that you're somehow falling behind everyone else on Earth.
That's a terrible deal.
You'd run away.
Right.
You would literally call for help. Yet, if you look at the math, if you look at the averages right now,
Yeah.
that is exactly the trade we are actively making with these supercomputers sitting in our pockets.
It's wild. It is the most universally accepted yet individually destructive bargain of the modern era. I mean, we have willingly traded our most precious, irreplaceable resource, which is, our focused attention.
Yeah.
And we trade it for a product that ultimately leaves us completely depleted. And the strangest part is how ordinary it feels. Like, we don't view it as a public health crisis. We just view it as another Tuesday.
Exactly. And if you're listening to this deep dive right now, maybe you're on your commute or in that brief lull between back-to-back virtual meetings, you likely know exactly what this feels like.
Oh, absolutely.
You're a busy professional, you hit that 3 p.m. wall, your brain fog rolls in, and you just want a momentary escape.
Okay.
So you close your laptop, you pull out your phone, hoping to find a quick mental break, and then boom, 20 minutes later, you snap out of a trance, feeling infinitely more exhausted than when you started.
Right, because you go looking for rest and you actually find a highly engineered, deeply stimulating environment that demands even more of your cognitive energy. It's this crazy paradox that really defines our current digital landscape. We are desperately seeking recovery in the exact places designed to extract whatever focus we have left.
Which brings us to the core of today's discussion. We are analyzing a really brilliant mini book titled Attention Forest. And our mission today isn't to just talk about the problem.
Yeah, we all know the problem.
Yeah, I think we all feel the problem in our bones at this point. Our goal is to map a very specific journey for you. We want to trace the route out from that chaotic, exhausting trap of passive digital consumption and explore a tangible framework for moving toward a peaceful mind and intentional, genuine growth.
So, okay, let's unpack this. How did we even get here?
Well, we should establish the ground rules for this conversation right away.
Yeah.
This is not going to be a lecture on sheer willpower.
Thank goodness.
Right. We aren't here to wag a finger at you about your screen time or suggest the highly impractical solution of, throwing your smartphone into a river and moving to a cabin.
Though some days that sounds really nice.
It does. But the mini book approaches this differently. It's a profound exploration of how our attention is currently being systematically harvested by sophisticated algorithms, and crucially, how we can work with our human nature to gently redirect that attention into something that actually sustains us. So we really have to start by confronting the reality of the trap itself. The statistics the mini book lays out are genuinely staggering. It states that in 2024, the average person spent 6 to 7 hours a day looking at a screen.
Just let that sink in. 6 to 7 hours.
It's massive, and the composition of that time has shifted drastically. A massive, growing chunk is completely dedicated to short-form video. TikTok, Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. When you run the math on those daily averages, it calculates that a typical person will spend over 11 years of their life on social media.
11 years.
11 years. And the vast majority of the time isn't spent connecting with old friends or learning a new skill. It's just spent passively scrolling through a void.
Think about the sheer magnitude of that number. 11 years of conscious human life just evaporated. But to understand how we got here, we have to dispel a very persistent myth.
Okay, what's the myth?
The myth is that doom scrolling is an accident, or worse, that it's simply a personal character flaw. People think, I just lack discipline, I'm just being lazy.
Right, yeah.
That is fundamentally incorrect. The behavior you exhibit when you are locked in an infinite scroll is the result of pure, unadulterated engineering.
Wait. I want to push back on that a little, because as professionals, we are used to taking accountability for our actions. If I eat a whole pizza, that's on me.
Sure.
If I sit on the couch and scroll for 2 hours, isn't that ultimately my choice? It feels a bit convenient to just say, oh, the algorithm made me do it.
I hear you. It's not about absolving ourselves of responsibility. It's about understanding the asymmetry of the battlefield. When you sit down with a pizza, the pizza isn't dynamically adapting to your biological responses in real time to make itself more addictive.
Wow, okay, that's a terrifying image, but a great point.
Right. The major platforms employ armies of behavioral psychologists, neuroscientists, and data engineers with a singular financially driven goal. To keep your eyes on the screen, the algorithm isn't a static piece of code. It is an adaptive learning engine.
It's actively studying us.
Exactly. It monitors what makes your thumb hesitate for a microsecond. It learns what sparks your outrage, what triggers your deepest fears, what activates your desires. Then, it calibrates a sequence of content perfectly tailored to your unique psychological profile. It is explicitly designed to hold your nervous system at peak engagement because, in this economy, your sustained attention is the actual inventory they sell to advertisers.
Okay, so if it's an engineered trap, how does the mechanism actually work? Because we've all had those bizarre moments of cognitive dissonance where a voice in our head is actively saying, put the phone down, you need to go to sleep. But our thumb just autonomously keeps swiping.
Oh, yeah.
It feels almost like a physiological hijacking.
What's fascinating here is that it is a hijacking, and it relies on a very old piece of our evolutionary biology. To really understand the infinite scroll, we actually have to look back to the 1950s and the work of behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner.
Oh, right, the Skinner boxes.
Oh, exactly. He conducted these famous experiments with pigeons. Initially, he found that if you give a pigeon a lever that dispenses a food pellet every single time it's pressed, the pigeon actually gets bored.
Wait, really? Gets bored of free food?
Yeah. It learns the system, it eats until it's full, and then it just stops pressing the lever. The absolute predictability removes the compulsion.
Right, because the brain says, I understand this pattern, there's no mystery here.
Yeah.
It's like turning on a light switch. You don't obsessively flick a light switch because you know exactly what's going to happen. The light goes on.
Exactly. But then Skinner changed the rules. He introduced what we call a variable reward schedule. Now, when the pigeon pressed the lever, sometimes nothing happened. Sometimes it got a single pellet. And occasionally, completely at random, it would hit a massive jackpot of food.
And that changed things.
Completely. Under this unpredictable system, the pigeon's behavior completely transformed. It would press that lever obsessively, frantically, long past the point of being full.
Wow. So the unpredictability itself became the hook.
Yes. And if we look at the evolutionary biology behind this, it makes perfect sense for humans, too. Our brains evolved in an environment where resources were incredibly scarce. When our ancestors were foraging for berries or hunting, the rewards were highly variable.
Right. You didn't just find food every time you stepped out of the cave.
Exactly. You might search for hours and find absolutely nothing. But the possibility of suddenly finding a massive calorie source that kept you moving. Our dopamine system evolved to reward the hunt under those unpredictable conditions.
It sounds like we're carrying a slot machine in our pockets, and every time we swipe, we're pulling the lever. Like most of the videos we swipe past are just digital dirt. They're boring. We feel nothing. Maybe one gives us a mild chuckle.
Right.
But there's always that unpredictable chance that the very next swipe will reveal something completely shocking or hilarious or, emotionally validating.
And that chance is what keeps the primitive foraging circuitry in your brain engaged. You aren't scrolling because you are enjoying the content. You are scrolling because your brain is convinced it is foraging for a vital, unpredictable resource. The platform has weaponized your evolutionary survival instincts against you to serve advertisers.
That is just wow. So what does this all mean for us as busy professionals who just want a 5-minute break? It's like we're drinking salt water when we're thirsty.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because the physical act of drinking feels like a relief for a split second. It feels like we are addressing the need to relax. But biochemically, it is actively dehydrating us and making the craving infinitely worse. Which brings us to the actual neurological toll this takes on us. The mini-book describes a very specific aftermath, that profound sense of flatness after a long scrolling session.
We all know that feeling.
Yeah. It's not a feeling of being rested, it's a feeling of being hollowed out.
The saltwater analogy is perfectly apt here because of how dopamine actually functions. Pop culture often misrepresents dopamine as the pleasure chemical, like the thing you feel when you get a reward.
Wait, it's not pleasure. I always thought it was the reward itself.
No, that's a huge misconception. Neurobiologically, dopamine is primarily the molecule of motivation and seeking. It drives you to pursue the reward. When your brain anticipates a variable reward, like the potential of a great video on the next swipe, dopamine levels spike to motivate the action of swiping.
So it's the engine of the hunt, not the feast.
Precisely, it's the craving. But here is the critical flaw in the context of endless scrolling. The dopamine system does not produce a lasting sense of satiety or satisfaction once the digital reward is found. It gives you a tiny transient spike, what neuroscientists call phasic dopamine, and then it immediately plummets back to your baseline.
Okay, but if I do that for an hour,
Right. If you keep forcing these unnatural spikes over and over for 45 minutes, your dopamine reserves literally become depleted. You end up dropping below your normal baseline.
so that feeling of flatness, that hollow, gross sensation when I finally lock my screen, that's not just psychological tilt. That is a literal biochemical dopamine deficit in my brain.
It is a measurable physiological state. This is why the mini book highlights that 60% of people report feeling worse about themselves after using social media. The immediate moment-to-moment behavior feels urgent and necessary to the brain, but the aggregate result is a severe depletion of your neurological resources.
And the damage isn't just temporary, is it? The mini book goes deep into how this daily habit is actively eroding our long-term attention spans through neuroplasticity. We hear that term thrown around a lot, neuroplasticity. But what is actually happening physically in the brain when we spend 3 hours a day rapid firing through videos?
Neuroplasticity simply means that your brain physically alters its neural pathways based on repeated experiences. It's the ultimate use it or lose it system, synapses that fire together, wire together.
Huh.
So, if you place your brain in an environment where it is required to read dense text and sustain focus for hours, it strengthens the neural networks responsible for deep, sustained attention. Your prefrontal cortex becomes highly efficient at blocking out distractions.
But if the environment I'm placing my brain in is a feed that serves a completely new, hyper-stimulating context every 3 seconds,
Then your brain adapts to that environment. It actually prunes away the networks meant for deep focus because you aren't using them, and it highly reinforces the pathways that expect constant, rapid-fire novelty. You are actively training your brain to become a master at processing 3-second context switches and simultaneously making it neurologically terrible at everything else.
so when a professional goes from their lunch break, where they just swipe through 100 disparate videos, back to their desk to read a complex 20-page market analysis, it's not just that they don't want to do it. Their brain is actively fighting the task.
Yes, because reading that document requires sustained focus with very little novelty. Your rewired brain interprets that lack of novelty as an error. It starts sending urgent distress signals, literally firing off stress hormones, saying, the environment is too static, we need a dopamine hit, check the phone.
Wow.
Sitting through a movie, reading a book, or holding a complex train of thought now requires immense, exhausting, conscious effort just to fight your own rewired biology.
And beyond the cognitive erosion, there's the emotional baseline shift. We talk about the physical stuff a lot. You know, how staring at a blue light at 11 p.m. suppresses melatonin production, so our sleep architecture is ruined.
Right.
But the mini book points out that the emotional stress, the content, is actually the silent killer here.
We have to look at what the algorithm selects for. It doesn't select for calm. Calm doesn't generate clicks. The algorithm fundamentally prioritizes outrage, fear, and anxiety, because those are what behavioral scientists call high arousal emotions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you see something that makes you angry or terrified, your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detection center, lights up. You stop scrolling, you engage, you argue in the comments.
Which is great for their metrics, but terrible for our nervous systems. We are exposing ourselves to a highly concentrated, globally curated feed of crises, political warfare, and hyper-reactive outrage right before we try to go to sleep.
And here's the thing. The body does not know the difference between a physical threat in the room and a digital threat on the screen.
Wait, really? It reacts the exact same way?
Yes. When you consume that content, your body initiates a physiological stress response. Cortisol floods your system. Your heart rate variability drops. Over time, doing this daily shifts your nervous system's baseline. You stop returning to a state of complete rest. Instead, you develop a constant ambient hum of low-level anxiety. You're essentially walking around permanently braced for impact.
We're exhausted, we're stressed, and on top of that, we are falling into what the mini book calls the ultimate comparison trap. Because it's not just outrage, it's also aspiration, but it's a deeply toxic form of aspiration.
Historically, human beings compared themselves to their immediate neighbors. You had a realistic sample size of what human life looked like, its successes and its mundane failures. But the social feed is not a window into reality. It is a heavily filtered, algorithmically selected highlight reel of the top 0.1% of human experiences.
And the insidious part is that we aren't just comparing ourselves to one successful person. We are comparing our behind-the-scenes reality to an algorithmic composite. I mean, I'm comparing my Tuesday morning workout to a professional fitness model, my career trajectory to a 20-something tech billionaire, and my weekend to a travel influencer in the Maldives.
Exactly. You are judging yourself against a continuous, aggregated avatar of human perfection that does not actually exist in any single person. The human brain wasn't designed to process that level of comparative disparity. It inevitably drives a pervasive, heavy sense of inadequacy. You feel like you are failing at life, but you can't pinpoint why, because the standard you are measuring against is an engineered phantom.
When you lay it all out like that, the dopamine depletion, the neuroplastic erosion of our focus, the chronic cortisol spikes, the inadequacy, the cost is terrifying. Let's actually do the math from the mini book, because this was the moment that really forced me to stop and evaluate my life.
Just sobering.
It really is. The mini book says, let's be incredibly generous. Let's assume that of the 6 hours you spend on screens every day, half of it is highly productive. You're answering vital emails, you're learning, you're building a business. That still leaves 3 hours a day of passive algorithmic consumption.
3 hours a day. It sounds almost manageable when you say it like that,
Yeah.
just a few hours scattered throughout the day.
But 3 hours a day compounds into 21 hours a week. And that translates to roughly 1,000 hours a year. 1,000 hours of your life every single year fed into the machine.
Yeah.
The mini book contextualizes what 1,000 hours actually represents. In that time, you could study and learn a completely new language to a level of conversational fluency. You could read 80 substantial life-changing books. You could physically train your body from the couch to running a full marathon.
It's a profound loss. It's not just time that is vanishing, it is your latent potential. It evaporates invisibly, 3 minutes here, 10 minutes there, while waiting for coffee or sitting on the train, until a massive percentage of your brief human life has been spent watching transient digital content that you literally cannot remember the moment you close the app.
So hearing this, the natural reaction for any driven professional is to fight back. We see the 1,000-hour cost, we feel the anxiety, and we try to fix the problem using the tools we use for everything else: discipline and restriction.
Which is our go-to for everything.
Right. We set arbitrary 30-minute timers in our phone settings. We download aggressive website blockers. We delete the apps off our home screens every Sunday night, declaring a fresh start. We rely entirely on raw willpower.
And as the data overwhelmingly shows, we almost invariably fail.
This is where I struggle. Why is willpower so utterly useless against this? If I can force myself to wake up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym, why can't I force myself to just not tap a colorful square on a piece of glass?
Because relying on willpower against a designed addiction triggers a well-documented psychological phenomenon called the deprivation trap. When you attempt to modify a deeply ingrained behavior through pure suppression, meaning you just try to deny yourself the thing without replacing it, you inadvertently make the suppressed thing significantly more salient and desirable to your brain.
This is the classic white bear problem in psychology, right? If I tell you, under no circumstances are you allowed to think of a white bear.
The very first thing your brain does is conjure a massive white bear. It's called the ironic rebound effect. The moment you declare to yourself, I am not allowed to look at social media, the concept of social media takes up residence in your working memory. The mini-book draws a parallel to other restriction-based failures. Smokers who try to quit cold turkey using only sheer willpower have a relapse rate hovering around 80%. Dieters who drastically restrict their caloric intake usually end up entirely preoccupied with intrusive thoughts about food.
Because the brain is fixating on the deprivation. If I just install an app blocker, I haven't cured the underlying desire. I just end up staring at my locked home screen, feeling this frustrating, uncomfortable pang of withdrawal.
Exactly. You are trying to use the conscious, logical part of your brain to outmuscle a basal emotional drive that has been fundamentally rewired to expect a specific reward. Willpower is a finite cognitive resource. After a long day of making decisions at work, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, is fatigued. That's usually when the algorithm strikes. You cannot just remove the action. You have to understand what the action is actually doing for you on a psychological level.
And this was a huge paradigm shift for me in the mini book. Doom scrolling isn't successful just because the engineers are clever. It's successful because underneath the toxicity It is actually meeting very deep, very real human psychological needs.
It is a maladaptive solution to valid problems.
The mini book lists the specific needs we are trying to satisfy when we open these apps. First is curiosity. Our brain is a prediction machine that biologically craves novelty and new information to understand the world.
Mm.
Second is connection. Even if it's shallow parasocial connection, seeing other faces activates our social circuitry, which makes us feel less isolated. Third is escape. It is a highly effective way to numb ourselves and flee from whatever is difficult, boring, or emotionally uncomfortable in our immediate physical reality. Fourth is progress. Just the physical act of moving down the feed gives a false sense of forward momentum. And finally, cognitive relaxation. After a high-stress meeting, we want an activity that requires absolutely zero directed effort.
So when you look at that list, curiosity, connection, escape, progress, relaxation, the reality becomes clear. You cannot look at a burned out, busy professional and simply command them to give up their only source of cognitive relaxation. You cannot command a human being to stop being curious.
No, you really can't.
Those are fundamental needs. If you just delete the app and offer nothing in return, you're leaving an emotional vacuum. And a vacuum always pulls the old habit right back in.
So if restriction is a guaranteed failure, how do we actually rewire the behavior?
We have to look at the mechanics of habit formation, specifically Charles Duhigg's habit loop model. Duhigg outlines that every habit consists of three distinct components: a cue, a routine, and a reward. In the context of our digital trap, the cue might be a feeling of boredom, or a spike of anxiety, or simply that transitional moment when you close your laptop at the end of the day.
Right, that specific moment you take a deep breath, the work is done, and your hand just automatically reaches for your pocket. That physical trigger is the cue.
Yes. The routine is the physical act of unlocking the phone and initiating the infinite scroll. And the reward is that complex, albeit hollow, cocktail we just discussed. The dopamine spike of novelty, the temporary numbing of anxiety, and cognitive ease. Now, here is the secret to behavioral change. The cue is never going to go away. You are a professional in the modern world. You will always experience stress, boredom, and transitions.
So I can't eliminate the trigger. I'm always going to feel tired at 3 p.m.
No, you can't. To successfully rewire the brain, you must keep the cue, but you must intercept and change the routine and the reward. You have to offer your brain a better, less destructive place to find that relaxation and curiosity. You need a substitute that satisfies the need without extracting the heavy toll.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this brings us to the actual solution presented in the mini book and the concept that honestly blew my mind. The argument of attention forest isn't that we should throw our phones away or become digital monks. It argues that we shouldn't try to stop scrolling at all.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive at first.
Right. We just need to replace it with a completely different kind of scroll, a scroll that satisfies the exact same needs: curiosity, progress, cognitive ease, but leaves a positive psychological residue instead of draining our dopamine.
It's an architectural solution to a behavioral problem. It asks a beautiful question. What if the time you spent on your phone seeking a moment of peace actually left a tangible, growing record of your curiosity?
Let's break down the mechanics of the attention forest philosophy, starting with the most radical departure from modern app design: the finite feed.
The finite feed is a direct counterattack on the variable reward system of the Skinner box. Instead of an infinite, bottomless algorithmic void designed to keep you guessing forever, the platform presents you with exactly 20 carefully curated cards each day.
And what's actually on these cards? I mean, it's not influencers doing dances, right?
No, it's high-quality, intentional content. It might be a fascinating piece of historical trivia, a breakthrough in positive climate news, a piece of stoic wisdom, or a gentle psychological reflection prompt. The content is designed to be enriching, not enraging. It takes the average user about 10 to 15 minutes to thoughtfully read through these 20 cards. And then, the most crucial mechanic of the entire system occurs.
The feed ends.
It completely stops. You reach a completion screen. There is no more content available until the next day.
Now, my initial skeptical pushback when reading this was, okay, if I have a serious, deeply ingrained TikTok habit where I'm used to scrolling for 2 hours, and you give me an app that cuts me off after 15 minutes, aren't I just going to hit that completion screen, close Tension Forest, and immediately open Instagram to get my fix? How does stopping at 20 cards actually prevent me from seeking more?
That is the brilliant psychological pivot of the finite feed. It leverages a powerful cognitive mechanism called the Zeigarnik effect. Named after Bluma Zygarnik, a pioneering psychologist in the 1920s, the effect describes how human beings naturally remember and neurologically fixate on incomplete or interrupted tasks far more intensely than completed ones.
The classic example is a waiter in a busy restaurant, right?
Yes, exactly.
They can remember a complex table's order perfectly while the meal is happening, like who had the steak medium rare, who wanted extra dressing. But the exact second the bill is paid and the loop is closed, the memory is completely wiped from their brain.
Exactly. The human working memory operates somewhat like RAM in a computer. An unfinished task is an open loop that constantly drains cognitive battery in the background, creating a low-level tension. Now, apply this to the infinite scroll. An infinite feed is, by its very nature, permanently incomplete. You can never finish Twitter, you can never reach the end of the TikTok algorithm. Because it is mathematically unfinishable, it keeps that cognitive loop ripped open forever.
So every single time I put my phone down after scrolling social media, I haven't reached a natural stopping point. I've just abandoned the task out of sheer exhaustion. I'm forcing an unnatural break, which leaves my brain feeling unsatisfied and agitated.
Precisely. You end your session in a state of abandonment, not completion. That lingering tension is what pulls you back to the app 10 minutes later. But Attention Forest changes the architecture. By giving you a hard limit of 20 cards and presenting a definitive, beautiful completion screen, it provides your brain with genuine psychological closure. You finish the day's feed, your brain registers the task as a closed loop, the Zygarnik tension dissolves. You feel a distinct chemical sense of accomplishment, and you are able to put the phone down easily without requiring an ounce of willpower because the psychological need has been fully satisfied.
That is so countercultural to everything we experience in tech today. Think about your own digital habits. I mean, listener, when was the last time an app on your phone actually encouraged you to close it, walk away, and feel good about yourself? The entire business model of the internet is built on denying us that feeling of completion.
By offering completion, the platform effectively shifts the user from being a passive, manipulated consumer of an endless void into an active, intentional curator of their own time.
Let's delve into how this intentional curation works mechanically within the mini-books framework. Because reading 20 nice facts is great. But the genius of this system is how it visualizes that effort. Every interaction you have with the feed carries tangible weight.
It employs a growth point system, but it deliberately obscures the stressful, competitive metrics we usually associate with gamification. There is no anxiety-inducing dashboard of numbers. The mechanics are subtle. As you go through your 20 cards, if you like a card which represents a quick acknowledgement of an interesting fact, you earn 1 point. If you save a card to your personal archive, indicating deeper resonance and engagement, you earn 2 points. And if you choose to reflect, meaning you take a moment to write a short journal entry or personal thought prompted by the card, you earn 5 points.
And what are these points actually doing in the background?
Yeah.
Because we aren't just hoarding a high score, they're literally growing your digital environment.
Yes. The invisible accumulation of points is translated in real time into a visible, evolving ecosystem on your screen. It is a visual manifestation of your invested, positive attention.
The stages of growth outlined in the mini-book are so satisfying. You start your journey at stage 1, which is just a tiny, vulnerable seedling in an empty dirt clearing. It represents your initial intention to change. As you interact and hit 21 points, the environment evolves to stage 2, a young tree. By 51 points, the landscape expands into a small grove. Then it becomes a forest patch, a thriving woodland, and eventually, once you cross 500 points, you reach stage 6, which is an ancient forest centered around a massive, deeply rooted oak tree.
And the brilliance of the design is that the ecosystem grows holistically. As the flora matures, the fauna naturally arrives. This creates a beautiful, gentle discovery system. It's not just a static painting of trees. When your forest reaches 30 points, a small robin discovers your grove and makes a home there. At 60 points, a painted lady butterfly appears on the screen. By 100 points, a fox arrives at the edge of the tree line. At 300 points, a badger builds a set near the roots.
And the way the app communicates this is so radically different. Instead of a bright red alarm bell notification badge screaming at you to open the app right now, you get these calm, nature-based dispatches. You look at your lock screen and it just says, "A fox was spotted near your forest this morning." It doesn't demand your attention. It invites it. It feels like a quiet dispatch from a sanctuary.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, The behavioral psychology underpinning this entire forest mechanic is what we call the IKEA effect.
Behavioral economics, the idea that we place a much higher premium on things we put effort into, like how I have a terrible, wobbly, flat-pack coffee table that is objectively garbage, but I refuse to throw it away because I spent 3 sweaty hours assembling it with a tiny wrench.
That is exactly it, though perhaps applied to a slightly nobler pursuit than your coffee table. Humans assign disproportionate psychological value to their own creations. We bond with what we build.
Hmm.
In the digital realm, we usually feel no ownership over our social media feeds because we didn't build them. The algorithm did. We are just renting space in their casino. But in attention forest, every single leaf on that oak tree, every butterfly that visits, represents a specific historical moment where you made a conscious choice to pay genuine attention to something positive. You develop deep psychological ownership over that digital landscape. It is inextricably yours. You grew it through your own curiosity.
And that leads to a profound narrative shift in how we view ourselves. The mini-book makes a crucial point about behavior change. Identity drives action. If your internal monologue is, I am a doom scroller who is trying really hard to scroll a zest, you are trapping yourself in a state of deprivation. You are constantly fighting against your own self-image.
It's an exhausting negative framing that requires endless willpower to sustain.
But if your daily interactions shift your internal narrative to, I am someone who grows a forest, everything changes. It becomes an empowering identity. You aren't avoiding a bad habit. You are actively tending to a good one. You are a cultivator.
Which naturally leads us to question the specific aesthetic choices of the platform. Why did the designers choose a forest? If the goal is just to visualize points, there are infinite ways to do that. They could have built a digital city with skyscrapers, or a futuristic space station, or a farming simulator. Why specifically a natural woodland?
Right. I mean, if I want to visualize my progress, a skyscraper going up floor by floor makes logical sense. It looks like progress.
It makes logical sense, but it fails neurologically. The choice of a forest is deeply grounded in serious environmental psychology, specifically a framework called attention restoration theory, which was formulated by environmental psychologists Rachel and Stephen Kaplan in the 1980s.
Let's actually break down the mechanics of attention restoration theory, because this explains why modern work leaves us so fried by the end of the day.
The Kaplan's research distinguished between two fundamentally different types of attention. The first is directed attention. This is the highly focused, top-down cognitive effort you use when you're analyzing a complex spreadsheet, navigating through heavy traffic, or vigilantly scanning a hyper-stimulating, chaotic social media feed.
When I'm using directed attention, what is physically happening in my brain? Like, what's getting tired?
Your prefrontal cortex is working in overdrive. Think of your prefrontal cortex like a bouncer at a very exclusive, very crowded nightclub. Its job is to forcefully block out the thousands of irrelevant distractions trying to get into your awareness so you can focus on the one thing that matters. But keeping the crowd at bay requires immense metabolic energy. Eventually, the bouncer gets exhausted. This is why you experience cognitive fatigue by mid-afternoon. Directed attention is a strictly finite resource.
Okay, so what is the antidote? What is the second type of attention?
The second type is soft fascination. This is the involuntary, effortless attention that is naturally engaged when we observe environments that are inherently pleasing but not demanding. It's what happens when you watch the flames of a campfire, or look at waves crashing on a beach, or watch leaves rustling in the wind.
Going back to the nightclub analogy, soft fascination is when the loud crowd leaves, the music stops, and the bouncer can finally pull up a stool, sit down, and just watch the empty room.
That is a perfect metaphor. In states of soft fascination, your directed attention networks are finally allowed to stand down, rest, and chemically recover. The Kaplan's original studies and decades of subsequent empirical research have shown that exposure to natural environments, and critically, even high-quality digital depictions of natural environments, triggers a cascade of physiological benefits. It shifts your nervous system from sympathetic fight or flight into parasympathetic rest and digest. It demonstrably lowers cortisol levels in the bloodstream, reduces blood pressure, and improves mood.
So by designing the app specifically as a calm forest, they are intentionally engineering a space that triggers soft fascination. They are building a digital environment that physically restores your brain rather than depleting it.
The unhurried, organic aesthetic of the forest is a direct, calculated countermeasure to the urgent, neon red alarm bell aesthetic of traditional apps.
The visual design of the app reflects this intention perfectly. The mini-book describes how the developers built a custom, canvas-based rendering engine to achieve a very specific look. It's not jarring or cartoonish. It uses soft, muted greens, deep, calming shadows, and three distinct depth layers to give the forest real, breathing perspective. And remarkably, it syncs with the four real-world seasons. If you're sitting in your office in October and open the app, the digital leaves in your forest have turned amber and copper. In December, frost and snow settle onto the branches of your oak tree.
This grounds the user. Instead of the frenetic, timeless, casino-like void of an infinite scroll where hours vanish without a trace, the seasonal changes anchor you in the slow, natural rhythms of physical time.
And for users who want an even deeper level of immersion, the platform offers a premium tier. It's around £4.99 a month, which introduces a fully animated living ecosystem. This isn't just static art sliding around a screen. The trees actually sway dynamically based on a sine wave that simulates real wind patterns. The bergs aren't just GIF silhouettes. They fly in real, mathematically calculated arcs across the depth layers. In the autumn season, there's an entire physics engine dedicated just to calculating how the leaves detach, drift, and settle onto the ground.
It is over-engineered for the specific purpose of calm. The intricate motion is designed to capture and hold that soft fascination even more deeply, pulling you completely out of your cognitive loops.
But the detail that absolutely captivated me, and the mini-book highlights this as the most magical sensory experience on the platform, is the fireflies. Once your forest reaches 100 points and the app transitions into the summer season, the lighting shifts to dusk, and these digital fireflies slowly begin to appear. They aren't flashy. They don't form words or demand you tap them. They just pulse, gently and randomly near the edge of the water in your grove. It's this tiny moment of quiet digital magic that asks absolutely nothing of you. It just exists for you to observe.
It is a profound inversion of the standard tech model. It is a digital reward system that gives energy back to the user rather than extracting it to sell to a third party.
But the journey detail in the mini-book doesn't stop at the edge of the glass screen. This is where the concept moves from being a clever productivity tool into something completely revolutionary. It bridges the digital and the physical worlds.
Yes. This is the culmination of intentional attention. The platform demonstrates how changing your micro-habits on a smartphone can literally alter the physical, ecological environment of the planet.
The developers partnered directly with a highly verified global nonprofit organization called One Tree Planted. The model is incredibly direct. For every premium subscription, the platform funds the planting of one real physical tree per year in areas of the world that have been devastated by deforestation or extreme wildfires. We are talking about active, on-the-ground reforestation projects happening across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and North America.
And we must contextualize the importance of this within the broader climate reality. The mini-book points out a stark, uncompromising statistic. Global deforestation currently accounts for approximately 10% of all global carbon emissions. Conversely, ecological reforestation is widely recognized by scientists as one of the single most cost-effective, scalable, and impactful climate interventions available to humanity right now.
So what does this actually mean for us, the people tapping on the glass? It means we have the opportunity to completely redefine the attention economy.
This raises an important question, which is really the thesis of the entire mini-book. What happens to the world when human attention is decoupled from surveillance capitalism and instead tied directly to ecological restoration?
It's mind-blowing when you truly internalize that framing. Under the old model, you take 1,000 hours of your finite life every year and feed it into a machine designed to make you feel anxious, inadequate, and exhausted, just so a corporation can sell ads. Under this new model, you take a fraction of that time, just 15 intentional minutes a day. You use it to learn, to grow, and to build a digital sanctuary that lowers your blood pressure and restores your mind. As a direct result of that exact same habit, a physical seed is planted in physical soil halfway across the world. You are directly trading a destructive, anxiety-inducing loop for cognitive peace and tangible real-world climate action.
It is an elegant alignment of internal mental health and external planetary health. And crucially, you aren't embarking on this journey in isolation. The platform features a world forest. It's a community page that aggregates the collective growth of every single user's forest into one massive global veer.
But they do it without introducing toxic competition, which is so rare. There are no daily streak counters flashing red if you miss a day. There are no most active user leaderboards designed to make you feel inferior.
Exactly. The design actively avoids peer-to-peer competition because competition breeds the very anxiety they are trying to cure. The world forest is merely a shared, visible record of collective human curiosity. It's a quiet testament to what happens when thousands of distributed individuals choose to redirect a small fraction of their daily attention towards something restorative rather than destructive.
It is a complete paradigm shift in how we interact with technology. We started this deep dive down in the chaotic, murky trap of the infinite scroll. We looked unflinchingly at the math, the 11 years of human life lost, the 1,000 hours a year drained away by algorithms engineered to hijack our evolutionary dopamine systems and erode our neural pathways.
We examine the harsh reality of why raw willpower and digital restriction almost always fail, how they trap us in a cycle of deprivation without addressing our very real, deeply human needs for curiosity, connection, and cognitive rest.
And then we explored a viable escape route. We looked at substituting the toxic, endless variable reward with a finite, highly curated feed. We explored earning genuine psychological closure through the Zeigarnik effect, and we visualized the process of turning invisible, scattered attention into a visible, calming digital forest that actually rebuilds our capacity to focus.
Ultimately, the insights from this mini book remain very grounded. It acknowledges reality. Attention Forest is not a magic wand that will unilaterally solve society's deeply entrenched doom-scrolling crisis overnight. The attention economy is a massive systemic force. But what this framework does offer is a practical, gentle, non-depriving alternative. It is a tool designed to work with human psychology, not against it. It allows a professional to take a fragmented, stressful 10-minute break and transform it into a genuine moment of recovery.
It finally gives your mind a place to rest. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to carry with you today. Think about those 1,000 hours you will inevitably spend looking at screens over the next 12 months. If you could somehow manifest a physical reflection of where your attention went today, if it somehow grew right there in your front yard, visible for everyone to see, what would it actually look like? Would it be a chaotic, anxious, depleted wasteland built on outrage and comparison? Or would it be a quiet, deeply rooted, thriving forest? The choice of what you water next and where you direct the incredibly powerful beam of your attention is entirely up to you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mini book. Protect your peace and keep growing.